Welcome to the Higher Love with Megan podcast with me, your host, Megan Cooper, a trauma-informed therapist, life coach and disruptor of wellness norms based in Brighton, UK. This isn't another nice-to-have wellness podcast. Instead, this podcast seeks to redefine what it means to be well in today's world. Here, we challenge the status quo, seek to reunite wellness with social justice and improve accessibility, diversity and inclusivity within wellness and beyond. As a listener, you are not here to passively consume. Instead, you are an ambassador for real, embodied, societal and systemic change in the world. As your host, I stand for radical self-inquiry and being able to have those confronting but necessary conversations so that we can remember our collective humanity at this time. We're here for the revolution and you've got a front row seat. In today's episode, we're going to do something a little different by having a core theme that has run through many conversations. This theme is Where Are the Men? This is a conversation ignited by a share by activist, photographer and filmmaker Misan Harriman on his social media last October, which started an ongoing inquiry and exploration behind closed doors with my husband and with other great men who have graced the podcast this year. As a little context, the video by Misan, which I'll play for you in a moment, draws attention to the underrepresentation of men in a lot of spaces for social change. Certainly those amongst a certain demographic, which are in fact the men that, as Misan puts it, sit closest to the levers of power. Certainly there are many men, notably from black and brown communities or from marginalised identities such as the LGBTQ+ communities, advocating for equality and justice and doing incredible work. Yet the question remains of where are the men, especially those with relative comfort, safety and influence. After you hear Misan's original clip, you'll hear me in conversation with my husband Caspar in an episode from last December. Listening back to this conversation, I was actually struck by how much my husband's stance and understanding has shifted in 8 months to become a man readily interrogating his biases and looking at where he upholds and benefits from the status quo in an attempt to actively advocate and take action for better. You'll then hear from Misan himself, who joined me for the incredible and popular episode, Let's Make Moral Clarity the Vibe. This conversation continues to reveal new layers of moral clarity to me with every listen, and I implore everyone to listen to this episode in totality if you haven't already. You'll hear from Fernando Deveras, a community organizer, educator and activist, who joined me for the episode Why Your Liberation is Bound with Mine, centralizing on the interconnectedness of all things, the history our education system left out, and why we should care about issues which seemingly don't impact us. You'll also be hearing from Kevan Smith from the episode Allyship Begins Where Your Comfort Zone Ends, who joined me to talk about how we can come together with shared vision, values and voice, how men can be in allyship with women's rights and marginalised identities, and the necessity and role for men to be ambassadors for change at this time. I would love for you to listen with openness and curiosity, looking for what resonates with you, what challenges you, what inspires you, where you agree and disagree, and I'd love for it to spark conversations with your friends, in your partnership, in your household, and in your communities in the same way that it has mine. I'd love to hear what you think. Please feel free to reach out to me via my website, higher-love.com, or via my Instagram, and also for you to share this episode on socials if it impacts you. Enjoy, and let's keep the conversation going.
So today was an interesting day. I usually get stopped once or twice when I'm moving around town by people who are all always lovely and saying, oh, they like my work. Today I was stopped 8 times. 8. And it was a myriad of the same thing. People saying they like my photography, my voice online, and it's really helped them in this difficult time. All really, really lovely. But the last person, the 8th person, I could see her coming towards me and I could see the badge. I couldn't quite make it out. And I was like, okay, it's a Lebanese badge. It's probably Lebanese. And she stops right next to me, doesn't say a word, eyes already watery. And she puts her hand on her heart, where her heart is. The tears start dropping as she does that. Then she moves a little bit forward and then puts her hand where my heart is. And she she holds it there, for me is what felt like an eternity, and I swear to God I felt every inch of her pain. She let go, and with a glance, she turned around and got on with her day. And I remember thinking, how on earth is she supposed to work? I mean, I don't know what she does, but she looks like she has an office job. How on earth is she supposed to function? And I'm sure all of her mates are banging on about whatever people bang on in the situation like this. So there's that happened today. And the second thing is, of all the 8 people that stopped me today, every single one of them were women. Every single one. And it just got me thinking, what on earth are men doing? Because the people that have the most privilege, I mean, you can say patriarchy, but if you focus in on that and look at white middle-class men who decide our healthcare, who run our country, who decide what bombs are dropped, what weapons are sold, how aid is administered, it is mainly white men. And I do wonder, the majority of white men who have that privilege, whether they recognize that they have it, and whether they're willing to step outside the echo chamber of arrested development and confirmation bias and do something with the time they have. Of course, I know some extraordinary men that are activists and protesters and doing everything in their power, but the broad range of men who sit next to the levers of power, I don't know what they're doing. If you're a man and you follow me and you're in WhatsApp groups with your boys, have a word. You don't have to change the things you want to buy or aspire to. You don't have to stop going on golfing weekends or planning on the deposit for the Porsche or obsessing over your gym body, whatever it is, whatever cliche that I'm throwing at you. All of that is fine, but you need to have the ability to empathize with what's wrong with the world that we are forced to exist in, especially if you're a parent and you have children that are going to inherit this mess. And I'm seeing so many women from all walks of life that are going on extraordinary journeys. And I don't think enough men are. And it is most concerning because men make so many of the decisions and have made so many of the decisions that have led us to this awful place that we are all in. So it's never too late to unlearn, relearn, and go on a journey that removes apathy from your life and infuses empathy to how you move, both professionally and personally. And thank you for all those people that stopped me today.
And here is the question, where are the men in this conversation? Like, is it that men find it challenging to go up and compliment other men on their work? Perhaps that might be a part of it. Is it actually that more women care than men? Also, perhaps. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great question. And I, as we've been talking about, like, we don't need to know the answers. I don't know the answer to that. But I can, what kind of comes up to me and what's been kind of surfacing when you brought this into conversation, I'm like, let's also take a moment to look at like where men are right now. I have shared this before. It doesn't take a lot to just look over at the statistics for male mental health and male suicide rates to raise a big red flag to say something's going on here.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big contributor to like the ability for men to step out of their own stuff and actually go beyond their own selves and be like, we need to stand up for marginalized and oppressed individuals and actually go beyond just caring about oneself into lifting up and being and stepping into that king energy for others, like that protector role. So I think there's something there as well.
Yeah. Interestingly, I mean, when you say that, it makes me recognize it again, that over the past year, with everything that's been happening, I have seen no men who previously I respected online speak out. Not one. Not one. Which I find astounding. Like, why is that? People who I would say have probably identified with bringing in their, king, standing for a better world, standing for humanity. They've identified with that, yet they have not found it within themselves, or for whatever reason it is, to speak openly about things that have been going on. And I find that really curious because I have seen many women do that. So why is that? I wouldn't put those men in the bracket of struggling with their mental health or, any of the red flag stuff that you brought up. Because I also think that that's very significant, and I would like to bring that in. But I think that there is potentially something there, and which is what we started speaking to, of like the fewer marginalized identities that you have, the less likely you perhaps are, without doing a shed load of work on yourself, to speak out against it.
Yeah.
Because those who benefit most from the systems that are in place, why would you speak out against things that are going on? As a white woman, I have a lot of privilege, but I am also a woman. I'm used to speaking out, or used to receiving biases that you perhaps have not had to consider. And like the conversation that Misan's video really brought up with us is like, as a white middle class man, you are at like the very top edge of society in terms of privilege and biases that you don't receive. And, I think that there was something there for you, wasn't there? Of like this recognition of like, why have I not had certain capacities, or why have I not had awareness around these things? And I think that is the interesting thing for us to consider.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I know that you sent that video to me, like it was pointed, It wasn't just like, oh, this is an interesting video. It was like, I need you to see this.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me for, many days, and it kind of bounced around. I'm like, actually, how am I showing up? Should I be more vocal? But then I'm like, oh, but I have a small following and blah, blah, blah. And, can I make a difference? And where can I make a difference? And should I be making a difference here? And Bryson got in like grassroots movements, or if everybody had that mindset, like nobody would say anything. So then starting to question my own logics around that as well. And it's something that outside of this incredibly full quarter of this last year, it's an intention of mine to really lean into that and lean into like, okay, how can I make a difference? Because as a coach and as a leader, it's my duty to do that.
Yeah. And, look, there is so much to care about in the world that if we were vocal about absolutely everything, we wouldn't get anything done. I mean, Fritzi Horseman, founder of Compassion Prison Project, said this. She was like, everything is urgent. Everything needs attention. And she just focuses her attention on prisons, because if she focused her attention on everything that she cares about, she would get nothing done.
Yeah.
And I think that is very powerful too, that it is like an all hands on deck situation. Like everybody has a different role. And I think like that's significant as well. It's like even within any kind of social justice organization, you have hundreds, thousands, dozens, however big the organization is, people doing different things. Every role needs to be fulfilled. Yeah. You can't do every single role. So it's about like working out like what your role is and kind of what your unique role within that is, and really leaning into that. But I think that if we're just continuing to
not make space for it
and not go very deep within and not interrogate how we are upholding things, then we're really missing a mark.
Yeah.
And I feel like that video is very powerful because it really brings to light like the role that men really need to step into. And it is true that, power really lies currently within the hands of a certain demographic of men. And it is that certain demographic of men who are at the very bottom of actually speaking out or taking action around all sorts of things. But when we're speaking to where are the men? I think that over the past generations, men are going through a big process. And I think that the mental imprint, perhaps, of men over the past generations has been incredibly challenging. Would you say?
Yeah. And it's evident, I speak to friends of mine who you can see they're clearly struggling, but there's no letting up of that. There's no vulnerability in that suffering. There's no acknowledging of that suffering. And they're really going through it because they don't have the tools to be able to express themselves or the spaces to express themselves. And they're there in it. And I look at those guys, I'm like, if you're going through that and experiencing that without support, how are then you able to support others? You first must be able to support yourself before you are able to serve others. That's how I see it, in very cut and dry way. And it is a good question. It's like, well, why aren't more men in that position of who have influence, who have bigger followings, speaking out? Is it through fear of rejection? Is it through some type of people pleasing? Is it just holding on to a kind of mainstream narrative? Who knows? It is a good question.
Yeah. I really do feel like there is something there around men having had to have locked away big parts of themselves intergenerationally, and how much that impacts your capacity to take on pain, collective pain, and be available for it. I mean, there's been a lot of times over the past year where I've been like, look at this video, or look at this video, or, look at this, look at the new horror that's happened today. And where you've been like, it's not a good time for me, or something. And this is not anything to shame you or criticism or judgment. It's just an observation. Because I know other women who have been very impacted by things that we have seen, who've also gone to show their partners or husbands, and they've had the same reaction. So it's more just like a collective observation and an invitation for an inquiry of why is this happening? And what do I need to do within myself to overcome that in some kind of way? And I do feel like there is a lot there. And I also feel, what's kind of coming through for me is it is a big ask of women to elicit that journey in men too. It's not for women to do that work for men, but I suppose that there is a degree of patience and compassion and forgiveness that is also demanded in order for men to step up.
Yeah.
And also, in the same way of marginalized identities, again, it's I don't know how to say this, but the more, in order for people with a lot of privilege to wake up, finally, there's just huge swathes of patience that's demanded from so many people as other people start to kind of wake up to things going on. So what I kind of hear there is me having patience for and compassion for the journey of others within that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well said.
I don't know if it was my brain today. I wanted to ask you, about 6 months ago, you posted this very powerful video, which has been very alive in our household over the last 6 months, which was around this topic of where are the men? And you said it from the context of now with the photography that you've been doing over the years, you get scores of people coming up to you to thank you for your work, to introduce themselves. And the majority of them are women. There was this question for you of where are the men? Where are the men within social justice? Where are the men within activism? And I know that there are some, but the ratio is obviously not equal. So I would love for you to bring that into the conversation, speak to that. And also curious whether you feel like there is any form of a shift since you made that video or not.
It's interesting. I'm just bloody proud of women. Christ almighty. If men are iOS 7, you guys are the update that hasn't even been released by Apple. You're well beyond anything in your ability to take on big issues, process them, and decide what to do with them. I think many men can take on the big issues, then they struggle to process it, and then they have no idea what to do with it. And it leads back to toxic patriarchy, how in many aspects of how we're raised, we're supposed to be the masters of the universe to have all the answers, when of course we're just scared little people just like everyone else. And it's so important that there are more men that lead with vulnerability, that allow other men to see that it's okay to just be their true selves. And it's funny that the term gentleman, gentle man, and I wish there were more gentle men, right? I am a gentle soul. I'm a big old boy, but I'm a gentle soul. And that's okay. I'm not looking to be in the next UFC fight. I cry listening to songs and reading poetry, and that's okay. That needs to be presented into the zeitgeist, right? In a way that unfortunately it hasn't in many cultures and societies. But there is a deeper thing in just how men and women are. I was looking into something for a film project I'm working on, mass shootings in America, and almost all the mass shootings over the last 100 years have been by men. Now, what's interesting about that is that women get abused. Women have crazy parents that give them guns for their 15th birthday. They're women that have exactly the same experiences as these men, but there is something that stops a woman from taking an automatic rifle, going into a school and killing 40 people. I'm not saying women are perfect, but there is a clear difference in data of how few women have done that. And then if you look even further into who's on death row, the women that are on death row are all, no, not all, but many of them on very specific kind of crimes of passion or insurance crimes, all awful. They're terrible things, but they are poisoning or killing their husband for life insurance and things like that. So terrible things, but they're very few that have killed 40 or 50 people. Which is why I can't remember Eileen, one of the few American, women serial killers. Charlize Theron did that movie, Monster, because it was so rare to have a woman do such awful things. So I think the point I'm making is that I think we need to make sure that we have more women in the rooms where the levers of power are. Because I do wonder how many women, in the worst that has happened in the world, how many women were in those rooms when the decisions were made. That's really important to me. And hopefully you think about the journey your husband Caspar has been on, my voice, the thousands of beautiful men that I've met throughout this journey of protest and resistance and civil rights, but it's nowhere near where we need to get to. Like, I always shoot the Women's March, and I'm like, this is such an ironic, weird march because it's full of women when it's the men that are hurting them. I'm like, you guys, you're not the problem. You're all marching, but you really are not the problem. The problem are the dudes that aren't here. We should have a Women's March that should have 90% men. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. Misan, can you make that happen, please?
I can try. I'll try. Unfortunately, I'm not a Kardashian, but I'm doing what I can with the platform that I have.
Yeah. Amazing. And I suppose that is the complexity that we have, isn't it? Amidst all of the complexity that we have, as you said in the video, it's the men that sit with the closest proximity to the levers of power. So that is something that needs to drastically change.
Yeah. You look at and also the women that become, the other thing is that when women, the structures that allow women to thrive make them not become, that have the sensibilities that make women so useful. There's no point in having more women in the room if by the time they get in the room, they have become a Theresa May or they've become a Margaret Thatcher, right? Because their politics have been forced. They've been forced to become part of the same machine. I think we've had a few women in Iceland and Finland that have just been exactly what I'm talking about, where they have that sensibility, the inbuilt empathy, the ability to be critical thinkers that I see and love in so many of the comrades, the women that I've met across many movements. But the system needs to be reset to make you be able to get to the top and not lose yourself and become something else. Just like brown and black people getting to the top. But look at the state of them when they're there. Look at Kemi or Rishi or
Priti Patel,
Kwasi or Zoella. Go and find a group of South Asians or West African people and tell me whether Kwasi Kwarteng speaks to them. You could go and find me them.
So what is the point of reaching the pinnacle of success and power when you are at the peak? You've become the very thing that has dehumanized and reduced you to a place where you are becoming the spokesperson of white supremacy. So now we have brown and black people that are saying the kind of things that most white people will be terrified to say down the pub. It's an episode of Black Mirror, and we are here.
Yeah. Caspar started watching Black Mirror last night, the new series, and I was like, my nervous system actually does not have capacity for this one right now. I just wanted to ask you just one more question on Where Are the Men? One of my biggest heartfelt grievances during this time has been that within the silence of, I'm a therapist and a coach, so this is the field that I work in. I've seen one male practitioner within wellness speak up at this time. One. I've seen more women speak up, not as many as I would like, but I have seen one male practitioner talk to this. What would you say to men at this time?
I think at this time, I would say that the accumulation of wealth, the capitalist aspirational needs that you've been told that you need, watches, cars, six packs, the beautiful woman, your club winning the league, in the later chapters of your life will amount to nothing if you looked away from a graveyard of children. That's what I would say to them, because it is easy to busy yourself in a capitalist society, especially for men. We're tribal in nature. Right? I was just at Waterloo Station the other day, and there was some kind of football match, and there were all these men in their blue and yellow tops, and they're chanting, and I was just looking at them. I was like, not a single fucking one of them has any idea that there are mass graves. One of the stats was Save the Children that people ignore, don't realize, is that the dead is one stat, but there are 20,000 missing children in Gaza. Missing? What the fuck does that mean? Going back to men, I do this a lot. Like when I meet, I have a way to just sit them down and they can't escape. And I articulate very clearly that you need to decide what your value system is. And if you are really comfortable existing as a cog in the wheel of rampant excess of wealth creation and accumulation of things, and that is you for whatever time you have in this earth, then own it. Own it. Say you don't care and get busy perfecting your golf swing or worrying what school your kids will get into. That's fine, but own it. And I have to have that discussion in this way at this point, because we're in a place where I can't gentle parent an adult during a genocide.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear on that one. Yeah. I'm done with supporting people's fragility at this time.
No, for an adult man, I'm a little bit more, I'm armed with facts, and then I let them know that life is fleeting. If you're lucky if you get 70 years these days. So if you're in your 40s, you haven't got that long left. And most people that are wealthy and men that can influence things are in their 40s and 50s. So what the hell are you doing? If the world, and the other thing that I always say to the fathers is that you getting richer is not going to stop your daughter or son living in what's basically going to be a zombie apocalypse. Because you only focus on your accumulation of wealth, your estate won't be able to protect your children from an ecological hellscape. Just know that at least. So if you are being selfish, just know that you're damn near going to kill your kids. We got to have those conversations.
Mm. Mm. It just reminds me of this definition that we have around the word activism. Now, I think in 2025, a more appropriate word is humanism. Just seems like everybody needs to partake in this in some kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. Be a bridge builder.
You mentioned that a student asked you a question, a college student asked you a question around why you care and speak out about issues that do not affect you directly, in terms of what's happening, for example, in Gaza or undocumented immigrants. And I know that this was a question that you posed to your audience for people to comment on what their reasons were. But I'm just curious how you answered that question to the student.
When the student asked me that, I took it as a genuine inquiry. It wasn't necessarily like a dismissal of my views. It was like, how do you articulate this to somebody? When people ask, why do you care about what's happening in Gaza? You have a son. Why don't you just focus on raising your son? Or there's local business here. Why don't you just focus on local business? I try to recognize that there's that famous quote by MLK that gets co-opted by people every year, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. But I think really it's just that spirit that, again, for me, my early teachers were people in the struggle for Black liberation, the Black liberation movement, where the philosophy has been none of us are free until all of us are free. And what happens to one person today may very well happen to you tomorrow. The poem that I believe I quoted in there from World War II, first they came for the socialists and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a socialist. And they came for the communists and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. It's, to me, interesting how cliche of a theme it is, and yet it's so hard for people to recognize it and to live by it. So for me, it really is just a recognition that I am interlinked with every human being on the planet, because the comfort that I enjoy as a citizen here in the United States comes at the expense of the exploitation of someone somewhere else. If I want to enjoy a chocolate bar, I have to recognize where the cocoa bean was grown and what labor went into bringing that cocoa bean. That was one of the lessons I used to teach my students, was how in the Ivory Coast, farmers are so poorly paid that they have to pull their children out of school to help them on the farms to grow the cocoa beans so that they can sell them to these international corporations that then sell the chocolate over here to us fat Americans who can't get enough. Meanwhile, they don't even make enough money to buy the chocolate bar. So it's just a recognition that we are interlinked. In situations like what's happening in Gaza, more clearly the link is there in that it is our government that is providing the political cover. It's our government that's providing billions of dollars every year to support this government. It's our government that is providing the weapons and the military capacity to do the kind of harm that they are doing and to commit that genocide. I think also just learning from history about what happened when people stood in solidarity and how we were able to impact change in that way. And so if I know that history, then I have to follow that template. I think the challenge for a lot of people is that they may not know that history. Or if they do have that historical understanding, it's very surface level.
Yeah.
I think that's where I come from on that.
I'd love to ask you about another topic that I know that you're very passionate about and is very alive for you at the moment, which is around this topic of, as you said, the deficiency of male presences, which I loved. I loved that. You're a great wordsmith, Kevan. But I'd love for you to speak to your observations around male representation within a lot of our spaces, I suppose, within the areas of activism and social change.
It's disheartening in a way. And I've been kind of taking on quite a bit of content to better understand this male condition and where we are, how we got here. And I don't think that it's full spectrum. I think that a lot of the Black and brown community think the men are doing a pretty decent job in a lot of ways. I think that men, maybe haven't felt for some time, maybe the patriarchy, makes us feel like we don't have responsibility to be nurturing. And so, like you see people disenfranchised or atrocities happening, and maybe that it feels like, oh, that's a responsibility of the nurturing element of community to go and address. And that's sad. So maybe it's just, something in the patriarchy that needs to be focused on. Because some bit of information that was shared about at least men in America was that thinking about its slave history or the history of profiting, off of free labor, and how those resources for centuries, were kind of poured into this one demographic of kind of white men. And so science and like business, you go to Tinder, and it would just be other white men, a boardroom. And, for centuries, that was the norm. And so that maybe bred a bit of a complacency. And now that there's an awareness and a more of an inclusivity and more competition, that has made it such that maybe men aren't used to having to work hard to achieve or to be, progressive, maybe a bit of entitlement. I can't say for sure, but I can say that it is noticeable, that there's a deficiency of men standing up and being uncomfortable. There's an epidemic where, men are harming themselves disproportionate, to women, or just I guess maybe there's a demographic of men as well, even to take it beyond. And I think that same demographic are the ones we are also looking to say, hey, like, where are you? Like, we need your support. You have the power. You can, like, help to do so much to move the needle, to drive the change. And I think they're related. The fact that maybe there's a demographic of men who are not there, but then there's also a demographic of men who are struggling in terms of their mental health. And listening to some podcast where the person was saying, okay, like maybe white middle class men have had it, great, for forever, basically. And maybe they deserve to feel, crap about themselves, but that doesn't change the fact that we need them, and that we need to nurture and do what it takes to help build this group up to contribute on par with, kind of how women, are, really, really kind of bringing it and keeping shit together for us in the West these days. And there is a crisis, going on right now for men. And we need them, but we also need to know how to support them. Yeah. And that has to be something that we really critically focus on.
When you were speaking about how the reality that you notice of men bringing this, as you called it, this toxic energy to spaces, and women perhaps even just feeling safer or not wanting to bring that energy to a space, how is that for you to recognize as a man? Like, how do you feel about that?
I feel it makes me feel sad. To be honest, it makes me feel sad when you feel like you're like, wow, women, you are better off without us around quite often. I think we bring this energy where we expect to be pampered or mothered, quite often. And it's just a little sad. I won't go as far as to say shameful, but to a degree, I think it is that we have a lack of resolve or fortitude, dexterity. I think women are so much more used to shouldering responsibility and dealing with societal pressure and, you know, and expectations. And yeah, there's a strength there that it's a little bit disappointing that I feel like a lot of men haven't really kind of maybe refined. And I feel fortunate, maybe because my background, my upbringing was so challenging that, and I was raised by my mom, you know, I never met my dad. And so maybe I'm more sensitive and aware to the realities of what, you know, like the challenges of being a woman in this society. And, but it's just like, wow, like I wish that there was more resilience.
Oh my God. Please say that to more men, Kevan, and let me know the responses. Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, and I would love to build on that opportunity piece, because the reality is we live in a world which is full of men and women and everything in between. And I think that it is so important, you know, for there to be male spaces, for there to be female spaces, for there to be spaces where everyone is a part of the conversation, because this is the world that we want to create. You know, we want to create more unity, more understanding. And I do think it is so important that, you know, that men continue to be a increasing presence and representation within the spaces which are designed for activism, social change, innovation in really constructive ways. And I would love for you to, if you have any ideas around that so far, I would love for you to share those. It's also okay if you don't have any.
I think that a lot of times, sometimes I think our men, like, ego, you know, kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with ego. And sometimes we need to know what good looks like and, you know, maybe have it highlighted when there's an example of the kind of energy that, you know, that women or that we as a community want to be a part of, and how maybe different demographics, and I say men, you know, how men fit into that equation, and the energy ultimately was what we were looking for. I think we need to be clear on what those examples look like. I think that, again, like I was saying earlier, you know, people from, sometimes it takes a man to tell a man, hey, look, man, you know, like, that's not really the vibe, or, you know, like, this is something to be aware of. And so I think we all need allies, you know, like, in looking to bring more Black and brown inclusion into the corporate spaces. We need, like, white middle-class people to vouch for us. We need them to share this message and to communicate it to their mates, who will understand it better coming from them. And so likewise, I think that to have more men and kind of maybe nurturing women led dominated spaces, that takes ambassadors.
So what do we think, team? I'd love for you to reach out to me with any thoughts, reflections, and takeaways. I'd love to keep this conversation going. In the meantime, please do hit subscribe, take a moment to rate and review the show. And as always, until next time, big love. Thank you for listening. It's great to have you with me on this journey towards higher love for all. Our time is our greatest commodity and gift, so thanks for investing it in yourself and sharing it with me. Please do take a moment to rate and review the show, all of which enables more people to find me and for me to connect with more great guests each week for both yours and my enjoyment. All links, references, and contact information is detailed too within the show notes. And I always love to hear your feedback, so feel free to hit me up on my Instagram at higherlove_with_Megan or via my website higher-love.com. Send your takeaways, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share or send on to someone else who would benefit. Until next time, big love.